Hello, I'm Brannon Howse, and welcome to the Worldview Weekend Hour. Tonight, my guest is James Simpson. Well, we've had him on radio, and he was the guy that first really broke the idea of the Cloward-Piven strategy back in 2008, early 2009. Yes, Rush Limbaugh and many others went to talk about it from there on, but the guy that brought it to everyone's attention was really James Simpson through his article at the American Thinker and other places. And it was how the leftists would swamp the welfare rolls to collapse the economy on a global scale. And also here in America, obviously, is where it all started with Cloward and Piven, a husband and wife out of Columbia University. And so that's James Simpson. He's an expert on many topics. And tonight we want to talk to him about his brand new book on how the Marxists and the Muslims are working together. Something we've been telling you here for years, haven't we, folks? The Marxists and the Muslims are working together to destroy their shared and common enemy, America. And we're going to talk also about Black Lives. A lot of talk about Black Lives Movement, right? Hey, would you be shocked to find out that John Piper tweeted? Yeah, Pastor John Piper tweeted on January 12th, 2016, if Black Lives matters, well, actually what he says is, if Black Lives matters, know why from their own website, blacklivesmatter.com. See what we believe and her story. And her story is one of the radicals that founded the Black Lives Movement. We'll tell you about her story. But then we also have another pastor and a man that trains pastors, Al Mohler. Al Mohler said a lot of silly things over the years, I believe, but here he said to Christianity Today, quote, if committed to the worldview of Scripture, both Black Lives Matter and the pro-life movement ground their moral urgency in the fact that every single human being, regardless of race, ethnicity, condition of life, or stage of development, is an image bearer of God. In this sense, there should be both common ground and common support. Black Lives Matter needs to be concerned about the racial disparity in abortion in America, and he goes on from there. But wait a minute, as though there could be any common ground with Christians and the Scriptures, with those that promote the Black Lives agenda, which is heavily steeped in the homosexual, queer agenda. Folks, we used to say queer, and that was considered a disparaging mark. Today, they celebrate being queer. And so how can Al Mohler think or even propose the idea that Black Lives Matter and the pro-family movement ground their moral urgency in the fact that every single human being, regardless of race, ethnicity, condition, or life, or stage of development, is an image bearer of God? In this sense, there should be both common ground and support. And he starts out by saying, if committed to the worldview of Scripture, both Black Lives Matter and pro-life movement ground their moral urgency. Well, they're not committed to Scripture. That's the whole point. What is going on with Al Mohler and John Piper even talking in any way that could be perceived as being positive about this radical movement of Black Lives Matter? Do these men know what is the history and origin of Black Lives Matter? Well, if they don't, maybe someone should send them a link to this television program, because my guest, James Simpson, knows all about it. James, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Brannon. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Tell me the name of your most recent book, will you please?
I'm happy to. It is called The Red-Green Axis.
Hold it up a little higher. I want to see that. There we go. Okay. The Red-Green Axis. Why did you choose that title?
Immigration and the Agenda to Erase America.
The Red-Green Axis.
That's what it is.
All right, the red-green axis. Tell me what the red stands for, and I'm guessing the red is the communists and the green is the Muslims, right?
That's exactly right.
Tell me about it.
Right. It's a very short, easy read, about 60 pages. You can get it on Amazon. You can also get a free PDF download at the Center for Security Policy's website. It's part of the Center's Jihad Reader Series. It's one of a number of them. They're all good.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about that book as well as the Black Lives Matter. Which one do you want to start with?
Whichever way you want to go. You were talking about Black Lives Matter. Let's do that.
All right, let's start with that one. Here we have an article from John Perazzo from Front Page Mag. He said, but when we peel away the veneer of deception, we find that Black Lives Matter, BLM is the abbreviation, is in fact one of the most destructive, hateful, racist movements in living memory, founded by a core group of revolutionaries who detest the United States and revere the nation's most devoted radical enemies. Black Lives Matter is at its essence, an ideological reincarnation of the Black Panther movement that flourished in the 60s. And then you wrote a big article, James, and we have it at worldviewweekend.com. It was entitled Exploiting Blacks, the Roots.
Reds Exploiting Blacks.
What is it called? What's the head?
Reds. Exploiting Blacks.
Reds Exploiting Blacks, the roots of the Black Lives Matter. Part of the page was cut off. Thank you for telling me that. Well, you go into great detail, and I want you to tell me about the founders of the Black Lives Movement, because you tell me in this article, you tell the folks about the radical leftist Alicia Garza, another person here by the last name of Curlors, and a Tometi. Tell me about these three people.
Well, they're all members of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Two of them are also proudly queer Black women. That's how they describe themselves.
They describe themselves as queer.
Queer Black women, yes. And in fact, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization has a strong emphasis on the whole gay movement. But it in and of itself is it's a descendant of the American Communist Party. I mean, it is as radical as the American Communist Party, and many of its members are members of the American Communist Party. The Black Lives Matter movement is really something that was created by the hard radical left, and I mean the communist radical left. And it's not new. They've been trying to use race as a wedge to divide our country. As far back as the 30s, the communist left infiltrated the civil rights movement very early on, and their purpose was not to see to the advancement of blacks. Their purpose was to divide this country along racial lines. And they've since sought to divide this country in every other way. They did the same thing with the gay rights movement. They do the same thing with the immigration movement. With every pressure group, they seek to find grievance groups that they can use to turn us against ourselves. And it's nothing more than divide and conquer. It's nothing more than a sophisticated version of the age-old divide and conquer methodology for destroying an enemy.
And isn't this interesting, James? Because I remember reading a book many years ago, and I've reread it a few times. None Dare Call It Conspiracy, by my friend Pastor John Stormer, but that book's now over 50 years old. It's approaching now 60 years old. Ronald Reagan used to buy it by the case, John Stormer told me, and give it away. But in that book, written almost now 60 years ago, he says that the radical communists were infiltrating the black community to stir up and agitate, and hoping that guerrilla warfare would break out in the inner cities of America. And the FBI was very concerned about this many years ago. And so this is not a new strategy at all, is it?
No, it's not at all. And in fact, Cloward and Piven just systematized it by using the welfare system as a means to promote more unrest among the black community. Because, as you know, their goal was to pack as many people as they possibly could onto the welfare rolls so the welfare system would collapse. And in the ensuing chaos, when people weren't getting their welfare, they would go out into the street and revolt. And that's what Cloward and Piven wanted. They were looking for revolution, and they were looking for a ground army to promote it for them while they stayed safely ensconced in their ivory towers on the grounds, on the campuses of colleges, and let the blacks do all the dirty work for them.
Tell me what connection this Garza, Coolers, and Tometi have, if any, with any of the other radical groups. I guess I'm also leaving out another person here, this Garza, Coolers, and Tometi. Do they have any connection at all to the Weather Underground?
Well, Colors was trained, of course, by Eric Mann, who was a Weather Underground leader, and he's still very active. And they're all in this thing together. Opel Tometi is the daughter of illegal aliens from Nigeria. She worked for the ACLU, defending illegal aliens against vigilantes opposed to illegal immigration. And she's currently the executive director of Black Alliance for Just Immigration. These people all work together. And these different groups, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Democratic Socialists of America, Communist Party USA, Socialist Party USA, Socialist Workers Party, they are all organizations that have a distinction without a difference. They're all fundamentally communist, radical left organizations, and their shared goal is to destroy this country. In his new Agenda 2 documentary, Curtis Bowers begins with the quote from a 60s radical: "The issue is never the issue is always a revolution." Now, I've used that quote before many times because it is so accurate about the entire agenda of the left. They don't care about Black lives. They don't care about gay rights. They don't care about civil rights. They don't care about welfare rights. They don't care about health care. They don't care about the environment. They care about one thing, and that is the revolution. The revolution is the thing that puts them into positions of absolute power, and they've been insinuating themselves into power using these various agendas for that sole purpose. And the Black Lives Matter crowd is no different. It's no different. And it doesn't matter that Garza and Tometi are queer activists. The people who fund this, the people who are behind it, the intellectual heavyweights that come up with these ideas have one single common goal, and that is to divide and conquer our country for their own personal wealth and aggrandizement and power. That's it. And that's all it's ever been about the left.
So what would you say to men like John Piper, who tweeted on January 12, 2016, if Black Lives Matter matters, know why from their own website, blacklivesmatter.com, see what we believe, and her story. Her story is that of one of these ladies.
Right.
What would you say to John Piper for tweeting that?
I would say, do some research. I would say, either there's one of two things. Either he is exceedingly ignorant, or perhaps he's covertly part of that whole thing. It's hard to know. I couldn't know without talking to him. But it's incredible that these people, whose fraudulent nature is so apparent, they wear it like a banner, and yet people want to engage them as though they have a legitimate gripe.
Yeah,
it's absurd.
It is. Tell me before we move on, talk about the green-red axis,
yeah.
the Marxists, the Muslims, how they're working together to bring down our shared enemy.
Yeah.
Tell me revolution. Do you think that our country is headed toward that? Do you see any kind of an economic collapse, massive inflation, massive deflation, a terrorist attack? Any of these triggers, could those not be the launching point that they use to then take advantage of the moment to bring a revolution?